I died 3 times before I learned the truth. Some debts cannot be paid in gold, and some promises echo across lifetimes. My name is Zahra, and this is the story of how I broke a curse older than the 7 seas by losing everything I thought I wanted. Before tonight's tale begins, I want you to comment below what time it is and where you are watching from. The night my father returned from his final voyage, the moon hung swollen and red over Baghdad, like a wound in the heavens. I stood on the terrace of our merchant house, watching his caravan wind through the narrow streets below. And I knew, with the certainty that comes before disaster, that everything was about to change. Zahra! My sister Layla burst through the silk curtains, her eyes bright with excitement. Father's back, and they say his ships carried treasures beyond imagining. We're saved. Saved. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. For 3 years, our family's fortunes had withered like dates left too long in the sun. Our warehouses stood empty. Our servants had dwindled from 30 to 3. The merchant princes who once courted father's favor now whispered behind jeweled hands about the fall of the great Rashid al-Basri. But I had seen something in that caravan that Layla, in her joy, had missed. The way the guards rode with hands on sword hilts, the strange greenish glow emanating from the central wagon, covered in canvas and chains. The way my father slumped in his saddle, as if the weight of the world had settled on his shoulders. Layla, I said carefully, when father arrives, let me speak with him first. She pouted. At 16, she still had the luxury of petulance. You always get to hear the important things first. It's not fair. Life isn't fair, little sister. Life is a bargain, and someone always pays more than they should. I didn't know, then, how prophetic those words would prove to be. Father climbed the stairs to the terrace an hour later, after the servants had unloaded the mysterious cargo into our deepest cellar. He moved like a man walking to his execution, each step heavy with dread. When he finally stood before me, I barely recognized him. The voyage had aged him a decade. Silver streaked his beard like frost, and his eyes, those sharp, calculating eyes that could assess the worth of a ruby at 20 paces, now held the hollow look of a man who had seen beyond the veil of the world. Zahra, he said, and his voice cracked like old leather. My clever daughter, my brightest jewel. What have you brought back, Father? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Everything we need to restore our fortune, and the instrument of our doom. He poured wine with shaking hands. Perhaps they are the same thing. Perhaps they have always been the same thing. I waited. I had learned patience from him, how to let silence draw out truth, like a merchant draws out a bargaining position. In the port of Aden, he finally said, I met a dying man, a sorcerer from the lands beyond the eastern deserts, where the sun rises from mountains of gold. He had a treasure, a lamp of green bronze, covered in writing older than the pyramids. He offered it to me for the price of a single gold dinar, 1 coin, Zahra, for something he claimed was worth more than all the spices in Arabia. And you bought it. Not a question. I bought it. How could I not? A merchant who refuses a bargain is no merchant at all. He drained his cup. The sorcerer died laughing. His last words were, the Djinn keeps his promises. That is why men fear him. A chill walked down my spine, despite the warm night air. You brought home a Djinn? I brought home a prison. The Djinn is bound inside the lamp, has been for 1,000 years, and he has made me an offer, Zahra. 3 wishes, granted without deception or trickery. 3 wishes to restore everything we've lost, and more. All I have to do is break the 7th seal. But Father's smile was the saddest thing I had ever seen. There is always a but with the Djinn, isn't there? The sorcerer's journal, which I found clutched in his dead hands, tells the rest. The Djinn's name is Zahir the Eternal. He was bound by King Solomon himself for the crime of loving a mortal woman. The wishes he grants are true. But when the 3rd wish is spoken, the wishmaker must send another soul to take their place in the lamp. A life for a life, a prison for a prison. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. So every person who has used the lamp has damned another to an eternity of imprisonment. Yes. Father buried his face in his hands. I thought I could resist. I thought I could simply keep it sealed, sell it to some fool with more greed than sense. But Zahra, we are ruined, truly ruined. The creditors will come in the morning. They will take everything, the house, the warehouses, even Layla. She will be sold to the highest bidder to settle our debts. No. The word came out harder than I intended. Layla was irritating, yes, but she was my sister. She had a laugh like silver bells and a heart that broke for every stray cat in the city. She deserved better than to be bartered like merchandise. Unless we use the lamp, Father continued, 3 wishes. We could pay our debts, restore our trading empire, secure Layla's future. We could have everything we've lost. His eyes met mine, and I saw the terrible question there. But who do we condemn in our place? I thought of our enemies, the rival merchants who had taken savage joy in our downfall. I thought of the corrupt officials who had demanded bribes we couldn't pay. I thought of how easy it would be to name one of them, to feel righteous about it even. But that was the Djinn's trap, wasn't it? To make the unthinkable seem reasonable, to transform good people into monsters, one small compromise at a time. There must be another way, I said. If there is, I cannot see it. I have 3 days before the creditors come, 3 days to decide. Father rose, suddenly looking every one of his 50 years. I'm sorry, Zahra. I should never have burdened you with this knowledge. But you are the cleverest person I know. If anyone can find a way out of this web, it's you. After he left, I stood alone on the terrace, watching the red moon sink toward the horizon. Somewhere below me, locked in chains and darkness, an ancient Djinn waited in his bronze prison. And somewhere in the universe, the scales of justice waited to be balanced, one way or another. I made my decision then, though I didn't fully understand it yet. I would go down to the cellar. I would speak with this Zahir the Eternal, and I would find a way to cheat the devil's bargain that had destroyed so many before us. What I didn't know, what I couldn't know, was that the Djinn had been waiting for me. Not for my father, not for any of the desperate souls who had found the lamp over the centuries. He had been waiting specifically for me, for a girl who had not yet been born when he was first imprisoned. Because our stories, his and mine, were threads in a tapestry woven by hands far older than either of us. And the pattern was only now beginning to reveal itself. The red moon disappeared below the horizon, and in the sudden darkness, I heard a voice, distant and dreamlike, whisper my name. Not the name my parents had given me, but another name, older, one I had carried in a life I couldn't remember. And I knew, with terrifying certainty, that I had died before, perhaps many times before. And each time, I had ended up here, on this same terrace, facing this same choice. The question was, would this time be different? I descended the stairs toward the cellar, toward my fate, toward the beginning of a story that had no beginning and, perhaps, no end. The cellar smelled of spices and secrets. Once, it had been filled with treasures from a dozen lands, silk from China, frankincense from Persia, spices from the islands beyond the eastern sea. Now, it held only shadows, dust, and in the center of the floor, a wagon covered with canvas and bound with 7 chains of iron. I had brought only a single oil lamp, and its light seemed reluctant to penetrate the gloom. The flame flickered as if afraid, casting dancing shadows that looked almost alive, almost watching. Foolish, I whispered to myself. Shadows don't watch. Djinn don't whisper names. You're letting Father's fears become your own. But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. Something was different about this place. The air felt thick, heavy with anticipation, like the moment before a storm breaks, when the whole world holds its breath. I approached the wagon slowly, and with each step, I felt the temperature drop. By the time I reached it, I could see my breath misting in the air, though outside it was a warm spring night. The chains were covered in symbols, not Arabic, not any language I recognized. They seemed to writhe in the lamplight, or perhaps that was just my imagination. 7 chains, Father had said. The 7th seal was the one that mattered. Are you going to stand there all night, daughter of Adam? Or are you going to speak to me? The voice came from everywhere and nowhere, deep and resonant, with an accent that belonged to no country I had ever heard of. It wasn't threatening, exactly. More amused. I steadied my breathing. Are you Zahir, the Eternal? I am. And you are Zahra al-Basri, daughter of Rashid, who fears the dawn and the debts it will bring. A pause. But that is not all you are, is it? What do you mean? Remove the canvas. Look upon me. Then we will talk truthfully, you and I. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to leave this cellar and never return, to let Father make his choice and live with the consequences. But I had never been good at running from things that frightened me. Fear, I had learned, was just another form of information. It told you where the real danger lay. I set down my lamp and grasped the edge of the canvas. It was cold as ice and rough as shark skin. I pulled. The canvas fell away, revealing a lamp of green bronze, tall as my forearm and elaborately carved. But it was the carvings that made me gasp. They showed a story in pictures, a tale of love and betrayal, of kings and magic, of a man who had dared to love above his station and had been punished for 1,000 years. And in the center of the largest panel, I saw a woman's face. My face. Not similar, not reminiscent. Exactly my face, down to the small scar on my left eyebrow from a childhood fall. But the woman in the carving wore clothes from ancient times, and around her neck was a medallion I had never seen before, marked with a six-pointed star. "You see it now," Zahir said softly. "You remember, perhaps? Or do those memories still hide behind the veil of death and rebirth?" My hand went to my throat, touching empty air where the medallion should be. "I don't understand. Don't you? Your soul knows, even if your mind refuses to see." The lamp began to glow, a soft green light that pulsed like a heartbeat. "Your name was Zephira once. You were a princess of a kingdom that no longer exists, in a time when Djinn and humans walked openly together. And I loved you. By Solomon's throne, I loved you more than life, more than freedom, more than the very air." The cellar spun around me. "No, that's impossible. I'm not. You are. You have been. 7 times you have been born, and 7 times you have died without remembering. But this time is different, Zahra. This time you came to me before the 3rd wish was made. This time you have a choice." I forced myself to breathe slowly, to think. "You're lying. This is what Djinn do. They twist words. They deceive. I am bound by Solomon's seal to speak only truth while imprisoned. Ask any scholar of the old ways, and they will tell you. A sealed Djinn cannot lie. I can refuse to speak. I can speak in riddles, but I cannot speak falsehood." I sank to the floor, my legs suddenly unable to hold me. "Then tell me the truth, all of it. What happened to Zephira? What happened to you? And why don't I remember?" The green glow intensified, and in its light, I began to see things. Not with my eyes, but with something deeper. Memories that were not mine, but somehow were. A life lived long ago, in a world very different from the one I knew. And Zahir began to speak. "In the days when the world was young, when Djinn still served humans, not as slaves, but as brothers, there was a kingdom called Ubar, the city of 1,000 pillars. It lay in the heart of the desert, sustained by magic and wisdom, ruled by a king whose justice was renowned from the western sea to the eastern mountains. The king had a daughter, Zephira, who was known throughout the land not for her beauty, though she was beautiful, but for her mind. She could solve riddles that baffled the wisest sages. She could negotiate treaties that brought peace between warring tribes. And she could see into the hearts of men and Djinn alike, knowing truth from lies as easily as others told gold from brass. I was a Djinn of the wind, bound to the royal family by an oath made generations before. I served as her father's advisor, his general, his friend. I had walked the earth for 1,000 years before Zephira was born, had seen empires rise and fall like desert flowers. I thought myself wise. I thought myself above the petty emotions of mortals. Then Zephira turned 16, and I knew I was neither wise nor above anything. I loved her completely, catastrophically, with a love that violated every law of Djinn and human alike, and she loved me in return. The vision, for that's what it was, showed me the city of Uber. It was magnificent beyond anything I had ever imagined. Towers of white stone reached toward the clouds, and gardens flourished where no gardens should survive. Water flowed through channels of silver, and the air shimmered with magic. The people who lived there seemed to glow with an inner light, as if happiness was something that radiated from the soul. And there was Zephira, me, but not me, standing on a balcony overlooking the city. She was arguing with someone, her face flushed with passion. The someone was Zahir. He wore the form of a man, tall and lean, with eyes like storm clouds and hair like midnight. But around him, the air rippled and shimmered, as if reality itself bent in his presence. "You know this cannot be," he was saying. "Your father would never allow it. The laws are clear. Djinn and humans can be allies, friends, even companions, but never lovers, never spouses. The children of such unions are wrong. They belong to neither world, and their existence threatens the balance." "The balance," Zephira spat. "Always the balance. As if love is something that can be weighed and measured. As if the heart acknowledges laws. The heart acknowledges nothing. That is why we must let our minds rule instead." "Then you don't love me." "I love you more than the stars love the night, and that is why I must leave." But he didn't leave. Of course he didn't. Love, I was learning, was not something that could be reasoned away. They found ways to meet in secret. Stolen moments in the garden at midnight, whispered conversations during diplomatic missions, a touch of hands that lingered too long, and eventually, inevitably, they were discovered. The vision shifted, showing a throne room filled with rage and judgment. Zephira's father, my father, in that life, stood before his court, his face a mask of betrayal and grief. "You have violated the oldest laws," he said to Zahir. "You have taken advantage of my trust, my daughter's innocence. I have taken advantage of nothing." Zephira's voice rang through the hall. I love him of my own free will. I chose him, Father, just as you chose my mother. Your mother was human. This is different. You know it is different. Different because you say so? Because old men centuries ago decided that love must stay within prescribed boundaries? The king's face hardened. There will be a trial. The Djinn lords will decide Zahir's fate and yours. The trial was a farce. I could see that even through the distance of centuries, the Djinn lords were afraid. Afraid that if one of their own could fall in love with a human princess, others might follow. Afraid that the careful balance of power between their species would crumble. Afraid, most of all, of change. They offered Zahir a choice: renounce his love for Zephira, accept exile, and never return to the human world, or face imprisonment. He chose imprisonment. If I cannot love her, he said, standing tall before his judges, then I will not love at all. If I cannot walk beside her, then I will walk nowhere. Imprison me, seal me, do what you must. But know this, my love for Zephira is the truest thing I have ever felt, and I will not betray truth for convenience. King Solomon himself was called to forge the prison, the lamp of green bronze, 7 seals, 7 chains, bound with magic that would last until the end of time, and a curse designed to torment the prisoner for eternity. The 3 wishes, each one requiring a soul to be condemned in the wishmaker's place. You loved a mortal, Solomon said as he sealed the final chain. Now you will tempt mortals to damnation. You will see the worst of humanity over and over until you beg for oblivion, and you will never forget what you have lost. But there was another part to the curse, one that Solomon, in his anger, perhaps did not foresee. Zephira was bound to the curse as well, not imprisoned, but reincarnated. Again and again, she would be born, and again and again, she would be drawn to the lamp, and each time she would die before she could break the curse, her soul sent to be reborn without memory of what had come before. 7 times, Solomon decreed. 7 times she will return. 7 times you will lose her, and only on the 7th time will she remember. Only then will you both have the choice that was denied to you before. The vision faded, and I found myself back in the cellar, tears streaming down my face for a love I couldn't remember, for a life I had never lived, or had lived 7 times before. How did I die? I whispered. In those other lives, how did it end? different ways," Zahir said, and his voice was heavy with centuries of grief. "Sometimes you refused to make a wish, and your family was destroyed. Sometimes you tried to free me without making any wishes, and the magic killed you. Once, you made all 3 wishes, but refused to name a soul to take your place. The curse tore you apart. Each time, I watched you die. Each time, I was helpless to save you. And this time, what makes this time different? You came to me before the wishes were made. You came seeking truth, not treasure. That has never happened before." A pause. "And you are the 7th, Zahra, the 7th incarnation of Zephira. According to Solomon's curse, you now have the power to break it, if you can solve the riddle." "What riddle?" "The one I have waited 1,000 years to ask, and that Zephira spent 16 years learning to answer." The lamp began to pulse with light, faster and faster, and I felt power building in the air like a gathering storm. The green glow illuminated the entire cellar now, bright as noon. And in that light, I saw not just the lamp, but patterns. Mathematical, magical, ancient, spreading across the floor in concentric circles. Zahir's voice echoed through the space, resonant and terrible. "What is the only cage that holds both prisoner and jailer? What is the only bond that freedom cannot break? What is the only magic that neither Djinn nor human can command? Yet both must obey. Answer this, Zephira, who is Zahra, and the curse will shatter. Answer wrong, and you will die as you have died before, and be born again to try once more. But know this, Solomon's number is 7. You are the 7th. There will be no 8th chance. The light reached a crescendo, then vanished, plunging the cellar back into darkness. Only my small oil lamp remained, its flame barely a flicker. I sat in the silence, my mind racing. The riddle was familiar, not because I had heard it before in this life, but because somewhere in the depths of my soul, I had spent years pondering it. 16 years, in a life I couldn't remember, in a city that no longer existed. And slowly, like dawn breaking over the desert, the answer came to me. Love, I whispered. The answer is love. The lamp began to glow again, but this time the light was warm, gentle, like sunlight on water. Explain, Zahir said, and I could hear the hope in his voice, barely contained. I stood, wiping the tears from my face, and placed my hand on the bronze surface of the lamp. It was warm now, not cold, alive. Love is the only cage that holds both prisoner and jailer, I said. Because when you truly love someone, you are bound to them as surely as they are bound to you. You are imprisoned by their joy, their sorrow, their fate, and they are imprisoned by yours. Go on. Love is the only bond that freedom cannot break, because even if you are separated by death, by distance, by time itself, even if you are sealed in bronze and cursed for 1,000 years, the love remains. It cannot be reasoned away or forgotten, no matter how hard you try. The green light grew brighter, warmer, and I felt something changing, not just in the cellar, but in the world, as if ancient gears were finally clicking into place. And love is the only magic that neither Djinn nor human can command, yet both must obey, I finished. Because love is not something you decide. It's not something you control. It simply is. It chooses you. And you can only choose whether to acknowledge it or deny it. But you cannot command it. You cannot bend it to your will. You can only surrender to it. The chains around the lamp began to glow. One by one, they shattered, ringing like bells as they fell to the stone floor. 7 chains, 7 seals, breaking in a cascade of light and sound. And when the last chain fell, the lamp itself cracked down the middle, a line of gold light spilling through. You remembered, Zahir said, and his voice was choked with emotion. After 1,000 years, after 7 lifetimes, you finally remembered. I remember, I said, and it was true. Not everything, not all the details of that ancient life, but the important things. The feel of wind in gardens that no longer existed, the sound of Zahir's laugh when I solved a particularly difficult riddle, the way he looked at me as if I was his whole world, the way I looked at him the same way. The lamp exploded in a burst of golden light, and Zahir stood before me. He looked exactly as he had in the vision, tall and lean, with eyes like storm clouds. But he also looked different, somehow more solid, more real. As if for the first time in 1,000 years, he was fully present in the world. Zephira, he breathed. Zahra, I corrected gently. I am her, but I'm also myself. I'm both. I'm neither. I laughed, suddenly giddy. I don't know what I am anymore. You are free, he said. For the first time in 7 lives, you are free. No curse hangs over you. No debt remains unpaid. He reached out, hesitant, as if afraid I might vanish. I took his hand. His skin was warm, human, but with a quality that was distinctly other, like touching summer lightning, like holding bottled wind. "What happens now?" I asked. Zahir smiled, but it was a sad smile. "That depends. The curse is broken, Zahra. I am free. You are free. But your father's debts remain. The creditors will still come with the dawn. Layla's fate is unchanged. The lamp no longer offers 3 wishes. I am no longer bound to grant them. I cannot solve your family's problems for you." Of course, I had been so focused on the riddle, on the curse, on the impossible romance of a Djinn and a mortal separated by death and time, that I had forgotten. The whole reason I had come down here in the first place. My family was still ruined. Tomorrow would still bring disaster. "But," Zahir continued, "I am not without resources. I have walked the earth for 2,000 years. I know secrets that kings would kill for. I know where treasures lie hidden, and which merchants are honest, and which trade routes will flourish. I cannot give you 3 wishes, but I can give you something better: counsel, partnership, and if you will have me, love." He said that last word hesitantly, as if afraid I would reject him, as if 1,000 years of imprisonment, 7 lifetimes of dying, and all the pain we had endured wasn't proof enough that whatever bound us together was stronger than any curse. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Here I was, standing in a dusty cellar, my family facing ruin, my whole world turned upside down by revelations about a life I had lived a millennium ago. And all I could feel was joy. "Yes," I said. "Yes to all of it. We'll save my family together. We'll rebuild the merchant house together. We'll face whatever comes together. Even though I'm Djinn, even though the laws still say we cannot be together." "To hell with the laws," I said. "To hell with the old men who wrote them and the old Djinn who enforced them. We've paid our debt 7 times over. If anyone has earned the right to love whom they choose, it's us." Zahir pulled me into his arms, and I let him. For a moment, we just stood there, holding each other. 2 souls finally reunited after being torn apart by pride, fear, and the rigid rules of beings who thought they knew better than the human heart. "Thank you," he whispered into my hair. "Thank you for remembering. Thank you for solving the riddle. Thank you for being brave enough to come down here." "Thank you for waiting," I replied. "For 1,000 years you waited. That's a long time to hope. For you, I would have waited 10,000 years." We stood there in the darkness and the lamplight. And for the first time in 7 lifetimes, the story of Zephira and Zahir had something it had never had before: a chance at a happy ending. But the dawn was coming, and with it, the creditors. And my father, who still didn't know that his youngest daughter was the reincarnation of an ancient princess, or that she had just freed a Djinn from a curse that should have lasted until the end of time. I pulled back and looked up at Zahir. "We have until dawn. Tell me everything you know about my father's debts. Tell me who the creditors are, what they want, what they fear. Tell me about trade routes and hidden treasures and everything else that might help. We have one night to save my family. Let's not waste it." Zahir grinned, and in that grin, I saw the advisor who had helped build a kingdom. Now that sounds like the Zephira I remember, always turning problems into challenges, challenges into opportunities. "I'm Zahra now," I reminded him. "You are both, and you are magnificent." We spent the rest of the night planning and plotting, and occasionally stopping to marvel at the impossible fact that we were together, really together, for the first time in 1,000 years. The red moon set. The stars wheeled overhead, and in the cellar of a merchant's house in Baghdad, 2 souls that should have been enemies by law, that should have remained separated by magic, that should have been destroyed by a king's curse, instead bent their heads together and schemed like the partners they had always been meant to be. By the time the sun rose, we had a plan. It was risky. It was audacious. It depended on timing, nerve, and a healthy dose of luck. In other words, it was perfect. Father nearly fainted when he came down to the cellar and found me calmly having breakfast with a Djinn. To be fair, it was a jarring sight. Zahir sat cross-legged on the floor, eating dates and honey with every appearance of enjoyment, while I poured tea and explained in abbreviated form exactly what had happened during the night. "So let me understand," Father said weakly after I had finished. "You are the reincarnation of an ancient princess. You broke a 1,000-year-old curse, and now you're in love with a Djinn. Technically, I've been in love with him for 7 lifetimes. I just didn't remember until last night." "That doesn't make it better, Zahra." "Doesn't it? I think it makes it rather romantic." Zahir was trying very hard not to laugh. "Perhaps we should focus on the more immediate problem, Rashid. Your creditors will arrive in 2 hours. We have a plan, but we need your cooperation." Father looked at him with deep suspicion. "Why would you help us? What do you want in return?" "Your daughter's happiness, which, at the moment, seems to be tied up with your family's survival. Zahir met Father's gaze steadily. I cannot grant wishes anymore. The curse is broken. The lamp is destroyed. But I can offer you something more valuable: knowledge. Specifically, knowledge about your creditors, that they would very much prefer remain secret. That got Father's attention. What kind of knowledge? The kind that turns a debt collection into a negotiation. The kind that reminds powerful men that they have vulnerabilities too. The kind that... Zahir smiled, and it was not entirely friendly. Levels the playing field. For the next hour, Zahir told us things about the merchant prince, Khalid, who claimed to be a pious man, but had made his fortune selling weapons to both sides of a war. About the moneylender, Bashir, who had a second family in Damascus that his wife in Baghdad knew nothing about. About the judge, who would oversee any legal proceedings, who had accepted bribes from both Khalid and Bashir in the past. How do you know all this? Father asked, his face growing paler with each revelation. I have walked the earth for 2,000 years, Rashid. I have watched empires rise and fall. I have seen men's secrets, their shames, their hidden truths. When you cannot die, you have time to learn everything. Zahir's expression softened. I do not share this knowledge lightly, but for Zahra, I will do what I must. Father looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time that morning. You've changed, he said quietly. Since last night, something in you is different. I remember who I was, I said simply, and I've decided who I want to be. And who is that? Someone who doesn't accept the world as it is, but works to make it what it should be. Someone who believes that love is worth fighting for, no matter what the laws say. Someone who... I took Zahir's hand, feeling the warmth of his skin against mine, makes her own bargains. A knock at the cellar door interrupted us. One of our remaining servants, looking frightened. Master Rashid, the creditors are here, all of them, and they've brought the judge. Father stood, squaring his shoulders. Then let us not keep them waiting. Zahra, Zahir, are you ready? We were born ready, I said, with more confidence than I felt. Well, one of us was born ready. The other is 2,000 years old and has forgotten what it means to not be ready. Zahir laughed. She's not wrong. We ascended the stairs together. The merchant, his daughter, and the Djinn, who had waited 1,000 years for this moment. And if Father noticed that Zahir and I walked with our hands clasped, he was wise enough not to comment. The creditors had assembled in our main hall, and they had brought quite a show of force. Khalid, the merchant prince, wore robes of silk and sat in the place of honor, his face a mask of false sympathy. Bashir, the moneylender, stood beside him, counting beads on an abacus with fingers that never stopped moving. And behind them, the judge, Qadir al-Rahman, known for his flexible interpretations of the law. "Rashid!" Khalid spread his hands in a gesture of welcome that couldn't have been more insincere. "My old friend, how good of you to receive us. I only wish it were under better circumstances." "As do I, Khalid. As do I." Father gestured to seats. "Please, sit. We have much to discuss." But Khalid's eyes had already found Zahir, and suspicion bloomed across his face. "Who is this? I was told this meeting would include only the parties involved in the debt." "This is Zahir," I said smoothly, stepping forward before Father could answer. "My father's new business advisor. He has recently returned from travels in the eastern lands and brings with him considerable expertise in matters of trade and negotiation." Bashir's fingers stopped their constant counting. "I have never heard of this Zahir." "That's because I prefer to work quietly," Zahir said, his voice carrying an edge of authority that made even the judge sit up straighter. "I find that the best deals are made away from public scrutiny. Don't you agree, Bashir? Or should I say, don't you and your associate in Damascus prefer privacy in your arrangements?" The moneylender's face went white. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm implying nothing. I'm stating facts. Just as it is a fact that Khalid's fortune was built on selling Damascus steel to the Crusaders during the last campaign, while simultaneously selling intelligence about Crusader movements to the Sultan. A profitable arrangement, I'm sure, though some might call it treason." Khalid shot to his feet. "How dare you? Judge Qadir, I demand this man be arrested for slander." "Slander requires falsehood," Zahir replied calmly. "I speak only truth. As the judge well knows, having accepted payment from both of you to overlook certain irregularities in past business dealings." Judge Qadir's face turned the color of overripe plums. "This is outrageous. I am a man of impeccable reputation. You are a man who accepted 500 dinars from Khalid to rule in his favor during the silk merchant dispute of 3 years ago, and 300 dinars from Bashir to expedite the seizure of the widow Amira's property last year." Zahir's eyes were hard as stone. "Shall I continue? I have 2,000 years worth of secrets, gentlemen. We could be here for quite some time." The room fell silent. The 3 creditors looked at each other, And in that look, I saw the crumbling of their united front. When wolves turn on each other, they forget about the sheep. "What do you want?" Khalid finally asked, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Father stepped forward, and I saw him transformed. This was the merchant prince who had once commanded a fleet of ships, who had negotiated with kings and sultans. What I want is simple: a fair accounting of my debts and reasonable terms for repayment. I am not asking for forgiveness. I am asking for time and fairness. Your debts total 12,000 dinars, Bashir said, his voice shaking. You have nothing left to offer as collateral. Don't I? Father smiled. Zahir, if you would. Zahir produced a rolled parchment from his robes. I have here a map to a shipwreck off the coast of Oman. The ship carried spices and silk worth 20,000 dinars. It sank in a storm 10 years ago, and no one has been able to locate it. Until now. He spread the map on the table, and I saw the creditors lean forward despite themselves. The lure of treasure is a powerful thing. I will lead an expedition to recover this cargo, Father said. Half of what we recover will go to paying my debts. The other half will fund a new trading venture. You will all receive shares proportional to what I owe you. And within 2 years, you will have your money back, with interest. And if you fail? Khalid asked. Then I will sign over everything I have left. This house, my remaining goods, everything. You will lose nothing by waiting. But if I succeed, you gain far more than you would by seizing my assets now and selling them at auction. It was a good offer. A brilliant offer, actually. And the creditors knew it. But men like Khalid don't become wealthy by being reasonable. They become wealthy by crushing anyone who shows weakness. No, Khalid said flatly. I want my money now. Seize the house, seize the goods, seize the girl if necessary. I'm done waiting. The girl? Father's voice dropped to a dangerous level. You mean my daughter? I mean the asset that will bring the highest price at auction. Your younger daughter, Layla, is quite beautiful. I'm sure she would fetch a handsome sum from the right buyer. Something snapped inside me. All my life, I had been taught to be patient, to be clever, to negotiate and compromise. But there are some lines that should never be crossed, some cruelties that deserve immediate response. Khalid, I said, my voice ringing through the hall. Do you remember the Crusader commander you sold information to? The one called Gerard de Montfort? His face went rigid. What about him? He's not dead, as everyone believes. He's living in Damascus under the name Jamil al-Faris, and he has kept very detailed records of all his dealings during the war, including his dealings with you. How much do you think the Sultan would pay for those records? How long do you think you would last once it became known that you helped the enemy kill Muslim soldiers? You're bluffing. Am I? Zahir, what color was the seal on the documents Gerard kept in his Damascus house? Blue wax, impressed with a falcon, Zahir said, without hesitation. The documents are kept in an iron box beneath the floorboards of his study, third plank from the eastern wall. Khalid's legs seemed to give out beneath him. He collapsed back into his chair, all the color drained from his face. Now, I continued, here is my counteroffer. You will accept my father's proposal. You will wait 2 years for full repayment with reasonable interest. And in exchange, certain information will remain private. Certain secrets will stay buried. Certain lives will continue undisturbed. You're blackmailing us, Bashir whispered. I'm negotiating, I corrected. Just as you have negotiated with desperate people for years, using your power to extract unfair terms. The only difference is that now someone has power over you. How does it feel? Judge Kadir cleared his throat. Perhaps Rashid's proposal has merit. After all, we are reasonable men, and the return on investment could be substantial. Very substantial, Zahir agreed. And think of how it would look. 3 respected businessmen showing mercy and wisdom by allowing a fellow merchant to recover from misfortune. The people of Baghdad would speak highly of your generosity. It was masterful, really, offering them a way to accept defeat while claiming moral victory, giving them a story they could tell themselves and others, one where they were heroes rather than cowards brought to heel by blackmail. Khalid looked at me with pure hatred. You may have won today, girl, but be careful. The world is not kind to those who step outside their place. My place, I said softly, is wherever I choose to stand. And right now, I choose to stand here, protecting my family, with a Djinn at my side. I suggest you remember that the next time you consider threatening us. One by one, the creditors signed the agreement. One by one, they left our house, their pride wounded, but their secrets safe. And when the door closed behind them, Father let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for days. I can't believe that worked, he said, sinking into a chair. It worked because they are cowards at heart, Zahir said. Bullies always are. They prey on the weak because they fear the strong. And today, Zahra showed them strength. Father looked at me with something like awe. "When did you become so formidable?" "I've always been formidable, Father. You just never needed to see it before." I smiled. "Now, about this shipwreck. Does it actually exist?" "Oh, yes. I discovered it years ago, but never had the resources to mount a recovery expedition. I always planned to return to it someday." He looked at Zahir curiously. "How did you know about it?" "I didn't. But I know Rashid al-Basri, and I knew that a man who spent 30 years building a trading empire would have contingency plans, secret reserves, hidden assets. I simply gambled that you would have something you could use as leverage." "You gambled with our lives?" Father looked torn between admiration and horror. "I gambled on your intelligence and Zahra's courage. It seemed like a safe bet." Zahir's expression grew serious. "But Rashid, you must understand. What happened today was only the beginning. Khalid will not forget this humiliation. Bashir will look for opportunities to strike back, and the judge will protect himself by trying to destroy evidence of his corruption, which may mean destroying you. So what do? We move forward with the salvage operation as quickly as possible. We recover the cargo, we pay the debts, and we rebuild your trading empire. But this time, we do it differently." Zahir looked at me, and I saw centuries of wisdom in his eyes. "This time, we build something that cannot be torn down by the spite of small men. We build a network of honest merchants, fair deals, and mutual benefit. We change the rules of the game." "That's ambitious," Father said dryly. "So is falling in love with a Djinn and breaking a 1,000-year curse," I pointed out. "I think we can handle ambitious." 3 weeks later, I stood on the deck of a ship called the Phoenix, watching the coast of Arabia slip away behind us. The name was Father's idea, a symbol of rebirth, of rising from ashes. I thought it was a bit on the nose, but I had to admit, it had a certain poetic appeal. Layla stood beside me, her eyes wide with wonder. This was her first voyage, and she treated every moment as a grand adventure. "I can't believe Father let us come," she said for the 100th time. "Mother would have been horrified." Our mother had died when Layla was 5, taken by a fever that no doctor could cure. Sometimes I wondered what she would think of all this. Her eldest daughter in love with a Djinn, her husband partnered with a being of magic and wind, her family's fate hanging on a treasure hunt in waters infested with pirates. She probably would have been horrified, but she also would have understood. Mother had been practical above all else. "Father didn't have much choice," I said. "Someone needs to keep an eye on him and make sure he doesn't do anything reckless. And someone needs to document the salvage for legal purposes." And someone needs to be with Zahir? Layla asked slyly. I felt my cheeks warm. That too. My sister had taken the news of my relationship with surprising grace. After the initial shock wore off, she had peppered me with questions. What was it like to be reincarnated? Did I remember dying? Could Zahir grant wishes? When I explained that the curse was broken and the wish-granting days were over, she had looked almost disappointed. Still, she had said, having a Djinn in the family will make for excellent stories at parties. Zahir emerged from below deck, where he had been consulting with the captain about currents and winds. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who had sailed 1,000 seas, which of course he had. The crew treated him with a mixture of awe and suspicion. They knew he was other, but Father had introduced him as a navigator from the eastern lands, and no one had dared question it. We'll reach the site by tomorrow evening, he reported. The weather is holding, and the currents are favorable. Your father is confident we can begin the salvage operation the day after tomorrow. That's good news. I tried to sound optimistic, but the truth was, I was nervous. So much depended on this venture succeeding. If we failed, if the cargo had been scattered or destroyed, if pirates found us or storms struck, any number of disasters could ruin us. Zahir must have sensed my worry, because he gently took my hand. Walk with me. Layla made a shooing motion. Go. I'll stay here and pretend to be a proper chaperone from a distance. We walked to the bow of the ship, where the wind was strongest, and the spray from the waves occasionally reached us. It was private enough for conversation, but public enough to avoid scandal. Not that I cared much about scandal anymore, but Father had enough problems without adding, my daughter has no shame, to the list. You're worried, Zahir said. It wasn't a question. Of course I'm worried. Everything depends on this. If we fail, we won't fail. You don't know that. You can't see the future. No, he admitted. But I can see you. And I know that when you set your mind to something, the universe tends to yield. It's one of the things I loved about you in the first life, and it's one of the things I love about you in this one. I leaned against the railing, watching the endless expanse of blue. Do you ever regret it? The choice you made back then? If you had just renounced me, accepted exile, you would have been free. You could have lived your life instead of being trapped for 1,000 years. Every day, he said quietly. I regretted it every single day. The words stung, even though I had asked the question. But, he continued, I never wished I had made a different choice. Does that make sense? I regretted the pain, the loss, the centuries of imprisonment. I regretted watching you die 7 times, but I never regretted loving you, and I never would have been able to live with myself if I had denied that love to save my own skin. He turned to face me, his eyes reflecting the blue of the sea and sky. We don't get to choose what we love, Zahra. We only get to choose whether we have the courage to honor it. And I would rather spend 1,000 years in a bronze prison, knowing I was true to my heart, than spend 10,000 years free but hollow. I kissed him then, right there on the deck where anyone could see. Let them gossip. Let them judge. Let the whole world know that Zahra al-Basri had fallen in love with a Djinn, and she didn't care who knew it. When we finally pulled apart, Zahir was smiling. The crew is staring. Let them stare. Your father is going to have words with us. He'll get over it. Layla is making very exaggerated winking gestures. She's 16. She'll grow out of it, probably. We stood together at the bow, watching the horizon. And for a moment, everything was perfect. The wind, the waves, the sun warm on our faces. The future uncertain, but full of possibility. 2 souls reunited after being torn apart by death and magic and the petty cruelties of those who feared what they didn't understand. Of course, that's when the pirates attacked. They came from the north, 3 ships with black sails, moving fast with the wind at their backs. By the time our lookout spotted them, they were close enough that we could see the men on their decks, armed with swords and bows. "All hands," the captain roared. "Prepare to defend the ship." Father came running up from his cabin, his face pale. "Pirates? Here? I thought these waters were safe." "No waters are truly safe," Zahir said grimly. He looked at me. "Get below deck. Take Layla with you." "Absolutely not. If you think I'm going to hide, well, Zahra, please. I can't fight if I'm worried about protecting you. Then don't protect me. I can protect myself." It was a brave statement, but not entirely true. I had no weapons training, no experience in combat. What I did have was a quick mind and a stubborn refusal to be helpless. The pirate ships were closing fast. In minutes, they would be alongside us, and their crews would board. We were outnumbered at least 3 to 1. "Zahir," I said urgently, "you're a Djinn of the wind. Can you do something about their sails?" He looked startled, as if the thought hadn't occurred to him. Yes, I can. But it will reveal what I am. I think staying alive is more important than maintaining your cover." Father nodded. "Do it." Whatever you need to do. Just keep my daughters safe." Zahir closed his eyes and raised his hands. At first, nothing happened. Then the wind began to change. It started as a subtle shift, the sails of our ship filling suddenly with new force. But then it became something more dramatic. The wind around the pirate ships began to move in the wrong direction. Their sails went slack, then started to billow backward. One of the ships actually began moving away from us, against the will of its crew. Shouts of confusion and alarm carried across the water. But the lead pirate ship was too close. It crashed against our hull with a shuddering impact, and grappling hooks flew through the air. In seconds, pirates were swarming aboard, cutlasses flashing in the sunlight. Our crew fought bravely, but they were merchants and sailors, not warriors. They fell back, step by step, as the pirates pressed forward. And then Zahir stopped being subtle. The wind around him became visible, a vortex of air that caught pirates and threw them back toward their ship. One man flew 12 feet through the air, landing in the water with a spectacular splash. Another was picked up and spun around before being deposited gently but firmly back on his own deck. "By Allah," one of the pirates breathed. "He's a Djinn." "Fall back," the pirate captain screamed. "Fall back! Cut the grappling lines!" But it was too late. Zahir was fully unleashed now, and centuries of restrained power poured out of him. The wind became a weapon, a shield, a force of nature. Pirates were swept overboard. Sails tore free from their masts. And the 3 black-sailed ships began to drift apart, unable to maintain control in the chaotic winds. Within minutes, the pirates were in full retreat, rowing desperately to get away from the Djinn, who had appeared from nowhere to defend a single merchant ship. When the last pirate ship disappeared over the horizon, Zahir lowered his hands. The winds calmed. The seas grew quiet, and every member of our crew stared at him with wide eyes. "So," Father said into the silence, "I suppose there's no point in maintaining the Eastern Navigator story anymore?" "Probably not," Zahir agreed. The captain stepped forward. He was a grizzled old sailor named Hassan, who had served with Father for 20 years. "Master Rashid, is this creature a threat to my crew?" "This creature," I said sharply, "just saved all our lives. Show some respect." Hassan looked at me, then at Zahir, then back at me. "You're with him? Like, with him?" "Yes." "Does he grant wishes?" "No." "Can he make more wind like that?" whenever we need it? Probably. Hassan shrugged. Then I don't care if he's a djinn, a demon, or the ghost of Sinbad himself. Any hand that keeps this ship safe is welcome aboard. Though I'd appreciate some warning before you do that again. Nearly gave me a heart attack. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crew. Sailors, I was learning, were practical people. They cared less about what you were and more about whether you were useful. Thank you, Zahir said quietly. I know my kind are not always welcome. Your kind saved my ship, Hassan interrupted. That makes you more than welcome. Now, can someone check the hull for damage? And someone get those grappling hooks off my rails before they rust? The crew dispersed, already turning the attack into just another story to tell in port. Layla emerged from wherever she had been hiding, her eyes huge. That, she said breathlessly, was amazing. Terrifying, but amazing. Can you teach me to do that? You're not a djinn, Zahir pointed out. Details. I'm sure we can work around that. Father laughed, actually laughed, with genuine mirth. Leave the poor man alone, Layla. He's had a busy day. He clapped Zahir on the shoulder. Thank you, truly. I owe you far more than I can ever repay. You owe me nothing. Your daughter saved me from an eternity of imprisonment. Saving your ship seems like a small thing in comparison. Still, thank you. We reached the wreck site the next day without further incident. The work of salvage was hard, dangerous, and tedious. Divers went down in shifts, bringing up cargo piece by piece. Father oversaw everything with meticulous care, documenting each item recovered. The ship had been carrying silk from China, spices from the Indies, and precious stones from Ceylon. All of it preserved remarkably well in the depths. By the end of the first week, we had recovered enough to pay off our debts twice over. By the end of the second week, we had enough to rebuild our trading empire and fund a dozen new ventures. Father stood on the deck one evening, looking at the manifest of recovered goods, and tears streamed down his face. We're saved, he whispered. By Allah's grace, we're actually saved. By courage, cleverness, and a little help from the Djinn, I corrected. Grace had less to do with it than you think. He hugged me then, something he hadn't done since I was a child. I'm proud of you, Zahra. Your mother would be proud too. You've become a remarkable woman. I learned from the best, I said. The voyage home was triumphant. We sailed into Baghdad's port with our holds full of treasure, and word of our success spread through the city like wildfire. The merchant house of Rashid al-Basri was reborn. The creditors were paid in full, with interest, and suddenly found themselves considerably less hostile to our family. Khalid even sent a gift, a bolt of fine silk with a note that read, "To celebrate your good fortune." It was as close to an apology as we would ever get from him. But the real change was in how people looked at us, at Father, who had turned disaster into triumph, at me, who had negotiated with creditors and sailed on treasure hunts, and at Zahir, the Djinn, who had chosen to stay with a mortal family instead of disappearing into the wind. The story spread. The merchant's daughter and her Djinn lover, who had broken an ancient curse and saved their family from ruin. Some people whispered that it was scandalous. Others said it was romantic. Most agreed it was certainly interesting. 3 months after our return, on a night when the moon was dark and the stars seemed closer than usual, Zahir came to me with worry in his eyes. "They're coming," he said. "Who?" "The Djinn Council. They've learned about us, about the broken curse, about the fact that I'm living openly among humans. They want to speak with me. With us." My stomach dropped. What will they do? I don't know. The laws about Djinn and humans have not changed, even if the curse is broken. We may be forced to separate. I may be exiled. Or worse. There's something worse than exile? There is always something worse. The Djinn Council arrived at midnight. They didn't knock. They didn't announce themselves. They simply appeared in our courtyard, 7 figures made of smoke and starlight. Terrible and beautiful in equal measure. Father and Layla were asleep, and I was grateful for that. This was not a meeting for mortals, except that I was mortal, and I refused to let Zahir face them alone. We descended the stairs together, hand in hand, to meet beings who had existed since before humans learned to make fire. The leader of the council was a Jinnaya named Marid, ancient beyond measure. She regarded us with eyes like deep water. Zahir the Eternal, or perhaps we should call you Zahir the Fool, given your choices. I have made many choices, Zahir replied calmly. I do not regret them. You broke your imprisonment. You defied Solomon's curse. You have taken up residence among humans, living openly as what you are. Do you understand how dangerous this is? Dangerous to whom? To all of us. For thousands of years, we have maintained balance between our peoples. Humans in their world, Djinn in ours, with only careful, controlled interactions between. You risk exposing that balance. The balance was always an illusion, I said, stepping forward. The council's attention swiveled to me, and I felt the weight of their regard like physical pressure. But I didn't back down. You speak of separation, of maintaining barriers. But those barriers were built on fear, not wisdom. Zahir and I have proven that Djinn and humans can work together, can love each other without the world ending. You are the 7th incarnation of Zephira, another council member said. His name was Samiel, and his voice sounded like wind through canyons. You broke the curse because you were meant to, because Solomon, in his wisdom, built a path to redemption. But that does not mean the old laws should be abandoned. Why not? I demanded. Those laws condemned 2 people who loved each other to 1,000 years of suffering. Those laws are built on prejudice and fear. If they can be broken, they should be broken. You speak boldly for a mortal, Marid said. I speak truthfully, and I speak as someone who has died 7 times because of your laws. I think I've earned the right to criticize them. A moment of tense silence. Then, incredibly, Marid smiled. You are very much like your first self. Zephira was bold too. Too bold, some said, but bold in the service of truth. So what happens now? Zahir asked. Will you try to separate us again? Imprison me again? Create a new curse? We could, Samiel said. But to what purpose? The curse is broken. You are free. And if we have learned anything in our long existence, it is that love, once kindled, cannot be extinguished by force. We tried that once. It did not work. Then what do you want? I asked. Marid's expression grew serious. We want to offer you a choice. Both of you. Zahir, you can return to the Djinn world. Live among your own kind. Be free of the complications that come with loving a mortal, watching her age, watching her die, watching her leave you behind, as all mortals must. No, Zahir said immediately. Or, Marid continued, you can stay with Zahra, live in the human world, but know that you will be watched. Your relationship will be a test case for whether Djinn and humans can truly coexist. If you succeed, perhaps the old laws can be reconsidered. If you fail, if your love brings disaster or destruction, then the laws will be reinforced, and others will be forbidden to follow your path. That's not fair, I protested. Our personal relationship shouldn't determine policy for everyone else. And yet, it must, Samiel said, because you chose to make it public. You chose to break the taboo openly. Now you must accept the responsibility that comes with that choice. Zahir looked at me. What do you think? What did I think? I thought it was unfair. I thought it was too much pressure. I thought that No two people should have to carry the weight of changing an entire society's laws. But I also thought about all the other Zephiras and Zahirs out there. All the Djinn and humans who might love each other, who might want to build lives together, but were forbidden by fear and prejudice. Didn't they deserve a chance? We'll do it, I said. We'll be your test case. We'll prove that love between Djinn and humans doesn't have to end in disaster. It won't be easy, Marid warned. Nothing worth doing ever is. The council members looked at each other, communicating in ways I couldn't perceive. Finally, Marid nodded. Very well. You have 1 year. Prove that your love can survive the challenges of 2 different worlds. Prove that it brings benefit, not harm. And we will consider revising the laws. And if we fail, Zahir asked, then you will be separated. Not by curse this time, but by exile. Zahir will be forbidden from ever contacting humans again. And you, Zahra, will live out the rest of your mortal life, knowing that your failure has condemned countless others to the same fate. No pressure, I muttered. Samuel laughed, actually laughed. I like her. She has spirit. Very well, daughter of Eve. Prove us wrong. Show us that the old laws were built on fear rather than wisdom. We would be pleased to be proven wrong. The council faded like morning mist, leaving Zahir and me alone in the courtyard under a sky full of stars. Well, I said, that was terrifying. Yes, we're being tested by beings who have existed since the dawn of time. Yes, our relationship has to be perfect for an entire year, or we'll be separated forever and also ruin things for everyone else. That's about the size of it. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. It was all so absurd, so impossible, so utterly ridiculous, that laughter was the only sane response. Zahir joined me, and soon we were both doubled over, giggling like children in the middle of the night. We're doomed, I gasped between laughs. Completely doomed, he agreed. But we'll be doomed together. The best kind of doomed. We kissed under the stars, 2 souls bound together by love and magic, and the sheer stubborn refusal to let ancient laws dictate our happiness. The test had begun, and we were going to pass it, or die trying. Well, I would die trying. Zahir would just live with eternal regret. But the sentiment remained. The year that followed was the most challenging, most rewarding, most exhausting year of my life. Zahir and I threw ourselves into building something new, a trading company that employed both humans and Djinn. It was a radical idea, and it met resistance from every quarter. Human merchants didn't trust Djinn. Djinn didn't want to work for humans, and everyone thought we were insane. But slowly, carefully, we built a network. We found Djinn, who were curious about the human world, who wanted to use their abilities for more than just isolation and secrecy. We found humans who were willing to look past prejudice and see potential. A Djinn of fire helped us establish trade routes through the desert, creating safe havens where none had existed before. A Djinn of water showed us how to purify drinking water for entire villages, saving countless lives. A Djinn of air, Zahir himself, revolutionized shipping by providing perfect winds for merchant vessels. And everywhere we went, we proved that cooperation was possible, that mutual benefit didn't require sameness, that love and respect could bridge even the widest gulfs. But it wasn't all triumph. There were failures too. A Djinn we hired betrayed us, stealing goods and disappearing into the night. It set our project back months and gave ammunition to those who said Djinn couldn't be trusted. A group of conservative religious leaders declared that our work was blasphemy, that mixing with Djinn was forbidden by divine law. They stirred up mobs, and twice we had to flee cities ahead of angry crowds. And there were personal challenges. Zahir struggled with being visible, with being known. For 2,000 years, he had been imprisoned or hidden. Living openly among humans felt like walking on swords. Every moment exposed, every moment vulnerable. I struggled too, with the pressure of being watched, judged, evaluated, with knowing that every argument Zahir and I had, every moment of doubt or frustration might be used as evidence that our love was doomed. We fought. Of course we fought. All couples do. About money, about priorities, about whose turn it was to deal with the latest crisis, about whether to expand the business or consolidate, about where to live, in the city where I had grown up, or somewhere new where we might escape the constant scrutiny. But we also loved, deeply, passionately, with a fierceness that had survived death and imprisonment and centuries of separation. That love was our anchor when everything else felt uncertain. Layla became our unlikely champion. She threw herself into the work with enthusiasm, becoming the public face of our enterprise. She was charming, eloquent, and utterly fearless. When merchants scoffed at the idea of working with Djinn, she would smile sweetly and ask them if they enjoyed breathing. When they said yes, she would point out that the air they breathed was the domain of Djinn like Zahir. "We've been cooperating all along," she would say. "We're just making it official." Father was more reserved, but he supported us in his own way. He used his connections, his reputation, his decades of goodwill to smooth paths and open doors. He never fully understood the romance between Zahir and me. I don't think he could quite grasp how his daughter had fallen in love with a being who had existed since before recorded history. But he respected it, and that was enough. The months passed. Summer turned to autumn, autumn to winter, winter to spring. Our enterprise grew, slowly but steadily. We established trade routes that had never existed before. We created jobs for both humans and Djinn. We proved day by day that cooperation was possible. But we also made mistakes. We failed sometimes. We disappointed people. We learned that changing the world is messy, complicated work that rarely goes according to plan. And through it all, the Djinn Council watched. The year was nearly over when disaster struck. A warehouse fire in the port district. One of our warehouses, filled with goods worth 10,000 dinars. The fire spread quickly, threatening to consume half the waterfront. Zahir used his powers to fight the flames, calling winds to push the fire back, creating barriers of air to protect surrounding buildings. He saved dozens of lives and prevented a catastrophe. But in doing so, he revealed the full extent of his powers to thousands of people. The display was impossible to ignore, impossible to rationalize away. Everyone in Baghdad now knew that a Djinn lived among them, and not everyone was happy about it. The religious leaders who had opposed us before seized their opportunity. They declared that Zahir was a danger to the city, that his powers were uncontrolled, ungodly, threatening. They demanded that he be expelled, imprisoned, or destroyed. Mobs formed. Not the small, easily dispersed crowds we had faced before, but true mobs. Hundreds of people, angry and afraid, calling for blood. We barricaded ourselves in our home with Father, Layla, and a handful of loyal workers. Outside, the crowd chanted slogans. Inside, we tried to figure out what to do. "I should leave," Zahir said. "If I go, they'll have no reason to attack your family." "If you leave, they win," I countered. "They get to dictate who belongs in this city and who doesn't. They get to enforce their prejudices through violence. Better their prejudices than your death." "No, not better. Never better." Father cleared his throat. "Perhaps there's another way. If we could get the Sultan to issue a decree protecting Zahir, declaring him under royal protection." "The Sultan won't do that. Layla said quietly. Not against the religious leaders. He's too politically weak right now. She was right. The Sultan was a puppet controlled by factions and interests that would never support us. Then what? I asked. We can't fight them. We can't negotiate with them. What's left? We could appeal to the Djinn Council, Zahir suggested. Ask them to intervene. They won't. This is part of the test. They want to see how we handle adversity. We sat in silence, listening to the shouts outside, growing louder. Someone threw a rock through our window. Glass shattered across the floor. And then, in that moment of desperation, I had an idea. We don't need the Sultan, I said slowly. And we don't need the Djinn Council. We need the people, the ordinary people of Baghdad, who have benefited from our work. What do you mean? Father asked. The merchants whose businesses have thrived because of our trade routes. The families whose children were saved by Djinn-purified water. The sailors whose ships arrived safely because of Zahir's winds. We've helped hundreds of people over the past year, maybe thousands. If we can get them to speak up for us, you want to organize a counter-demonstration? Layla's eyes lit up. I love it. I don't, Father said. It's too dangerous. If the two groups clash, people will die. People will die anyway if we do nothing, I pointed out. At least this way, we're fighting back. We worked through the night. Layla snuck out through a back entrance and ran through the city, spreading word to everyone we had helped. The merchant whose daughter was cured when a Djinn healer diagnosed her illness. The widow whose farm was saved when Djinn of Earth restored her soil. The sailor who survived a storm because Zahir taught the crew how to read the winds. By dawn, as the mob outside our house reached its peak, something unexpected happened. Another crowd arrived. They came from all corners of the city, merchants and laborers, sailors and farmers, rich and poor. They carried signs and banners. They sang songs, and they positioned themselves between our house and the angry mob. The merchant Rashid saved my business when no one else would help, one man shouted. The Djinn Zahir saved my son from drowning, a woman cried. They have done more good for this city in 1 year than the rest of us have done in 10, an old merchant declared. The religious leaders tried to shout them down, but their voices were drowned out. The mob of hundreds was met by a counter crowd of thousands. All the people whose lives had been touched, improved, or saved by our work. And in that moment, I knew we had won, not because we had defeated our enemies, but because we had proven something essential. That good work speaks louder than fear. That kindness remembered outlasts anger. That when you help people, truly help them, they remember. The Djinn Council appeared then, materializing in the middle of the street. The crowds fell silent, awe and terror mixing on their faces. Marid looked at the scene, the two crowds, the signs and banners, the evidence of support. She looked at Zahir and me, standing together on our doorstep. She looked at Father and Layla, at the workers who had chosen to stay with us despite the danger. "The year is complete," she announced, her voice carrying across the gathered multitude. "And the test is passed." She turned to address not just us, but everyone. "For 1,000 years, we Djinn have lived apart from humans, convinced that our peoples could not mix without catastrophe. Zahir and Zephira," she used my ancient name deliberately, "were punished for defying this belief. But they have proven, through courage and perseverance, that the old laws were wrong, that Djinn and humans can work together, can love each other, can build something better than either could build alone." Samiel stepped forward. "From this day forth, the laws are changed. Djinn who wish to live among humans may do so. Humans who wish to seek partnership with Djinn may do so. The barriers that divided our peoples are dissolved." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Shock, excitement, fear, hope mixed together. "But know this," Marid continued, her gaze sweeping over everyone. "Freedom brings responsibility. The barriers protected both our peoples from each other's worst impulses. Now you must protect yourselves through wisdom, compassion, and law. Build carefully. Build with respect. Build the world that Zahir and Zahra have shown is possible." The council faded, leaving behind a city forever changed. The crowd began to disperse, people talking excitedly about what this would mean. The religious leaders slipped away, their power broken. And slowly, carefully, life began to return to normal. Except nothing was normal anymore. Everything had changed. I write this now from our home in the city of pillars. Not the ancient Ubar, but a new city we built together. Djinn and humans working side by side. It stands in the desert where the old city once stood. And sometimes I think I can feel echoes of that ancient place in the stones. Zahir and I married 7 years ago in a ceremony that blended human and Djinn traditions. Father walked me down the aisle. Layla was my attendant of course, with 7 bridesmaids, 1 for each life I lived before remembering. The Djinn council attended, which made for some awkward moments, but also some surprisingly touching speeches. We have a daughter now. Her name is Zahra, and she is 3 years old and already showing signs of being able to manipulate wind like her father. She is the first of her kind, half human, half Djinn, belonging fully to neither world, and therefore able to move freely between both. She is not alone. There are dozens like her now, children of mixed heritage, growing up in a world that is learning to see past old divisions. They are the future we fought for, the proof that love between different peoples doesn't create monsters. It creates miracles. Father passed away 2 years ago, peacefully in his sleep. His last words to me were, "I'm proud of you, daughter. Your mother would be proud too. You changed the world." I don't know if I changed the world, but I know I changed my corner of it. Layla runs the trading company now. She married a Djinn of water named Rafik, and they have 2 children of their own. She writes me letters full of gossip and business updates and complaints about how hard it is to negotiate with Djinn, who take everything literally. The city of pillars has become a beacon for those who want to build something new. We have humans who come to learn magic from Djinn teachers. We have Djinn who come to learn crafts from human masters. We have markets where both peoples trade freely, schools where both peoples learn together, and courts where both peoples receive equal justice. It's not perfect. There are still those who fear what we've built, who want to return to the old ways of separation and suspicion. There are still conflicts and misunderstandings, still prejudices to overcome. But it's better. So much better than it was. Zahir walks into my study as I write this, carrying Zahra on his shoulders. She's laughing, her hair flying in a wind only she can see. "Mama," she shouts. "Daddy showed me how to make clouds." "Did he? That's wonderful, darling. Can I make a cloud in my room?" Let's start with outside clouds first. Zahir sets her down, and she runs off to find her toys. He comes to stand behind me, reading over my shoulder. "Writing our story?" he asks. "Someone should, so that people remember how hard we fought for this, so they don't take it for granted." Do you think they will? Take it for granted? Eventually, that's what people do. Today's revolution becomes tomorrow's tradition, becomes next week's. That's just how things are. But that's okay. That means we succeeded. He kisses the top of my head. "I love you, Zahra, who was Zephira. In this life, and all the lives before, and all the lives that may come after. There won't be lives after. The curse is broken. When I die this time, I stay dead. Then I'll love you in this life with enough intensity to make up for all the other lives we'll never have. That's a lot of intensity. I'm a djinn. We're known for being intense. I laugh and pull him down for a proper kiss. Outside, I can hear Zahra playing, making little whirlwinds dance across the courtyard. In the distance, the market is opening for the day. Human and djinn merchants calling out their wares in a harmony of voices. This is what we fought for. This moment of peace and love and ordinary magic. This chance to build a life together without curses or counsels or anyone telling us we can't. Was it worth it? The 7 deaths, the 1,000 years of imprisonment, the year of tests and trials. Yes, 1,000 times. Yes. Because love, real love, the kind that survives death and time, and the disapproval of entire civilizations, is always worth fighting for. And if I learned anything from living 7 lives, it's this: the most powerful magic in all the worlds, the one force that neither human nor djinn can command, but that all must obey, is the simple, stubborn, magnificent decision to love someone with your whole heart and refuse to let anything, not death, not time, not ancient laws, take that away from you. Years from now, after I am gone, scholars will find this account. They will study it, debate it, try to determine how much is true and how much is embellished. Some will say it's a fairy tale, that no curse could really work that way, that no love could survive 1,000 years. Let them debate. I know the truth, but I will tell you one more secret, one final piece of the story that even Zahir doesn't fully know. The Djinn Council didn't just test us that year. They tested themselves. You see, the old laws about separation weren't created by ancient kings or divine decree. They were created by the Djinn themselves, born from a single tragic incident thousands of years ago, when a child of mixed heritage went mad with power and nearly destroyed both peoples. The Djinn Council has lived in fear of that happening again ever since. Every law, every restriction, every prohibition was built on that one ancient tragedy. But Marid told me something on the night before my wedding. She came to me alone and said, "We were wrong. One tragedy does not justify 1,000 years of separation. One failed experiment does not mean all experiments must fail. We were cowards, Zephira, who is Zahra. We let fear rule us. Thank you for showing us a better way." That's what this story is really about. Not just love between two people, but the courage to try again after failure. The willingness to risk catastrophe for the chance at something beautiful. The recognition that walls built for protection can become prisons for everyone inside them. My name was Zephira, Princess of Ubar. My name was Zahra, merchant's daughter of Baghdad. My name was 6 other names in 6 other lives, though I don't remember them all. But in every life, the lesson was the same. Love is worth the risk. Connection is worth the danger. And sometimes, the only way to break a curse is to refuse to let it define you. I died 3 times before I learned that truth. But now I know, and I will live the rest of this single, precious, unrepeatable life with that knowledge blazing like a sun in my chest. The curse is broken. The story is told. And somewhere, in a bronze lamp that no longer exists, a prison that was made from fear has been transformed into a symbol of hope. That, more than anything, is why this story matters. Not because it's about a djinn and a human falling in love, but because it's about every person who has ever been told they can't, they shouldn't, they mustn't, and who chose to try anyway. This is for them, for us, for everyone who dares to love across boundaries that others say cannot be crossed. May your courage be rewarded. May your love endure. And may you break every curse that stands between you and your happiness. Written by Zahra al-Basri, wife of Zahir the Eternal, in the 7th year of the New Age, in the city of Pillars, where once stood Ubar the Magnificent. And they lived, not happily ever after, because life is never that simple, but they lived fully, loved deeply, and changed the world just enough that it was better for their having been in it. And really, what more can any story promise than that? The end.